Hi, Sagittarius. Welcome to my channel, Mary's Angel Tarot. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start the reading. So, the person who once made you question your worth is currently sitting in the wreckage of their own choices. And what they're feeling has nothing to do with you anymore, and everything to do with what they lost. Let's deconstruct what a player actually is, because I think the word gets thrown around in ways that flatten the complexity of what you experienced. A player isn't just someone who dates multiple people or enjoys their freedom. A player is someone who treats connection as a game, where winning means maintaining power, where vulnerability is weakness, where other people's feelings are variables to be managed rather than honored. And you were involved with someone who operated from that framework, someone who kept you at arm's length while making you feel like you were the problem for wanting more. They pushed you away not because you weren't enough, but because letting you close would have required them to be real, to drop the performance, to admit they wanted something too. And that level of honesty felt dangerous to them. So instead, they kept you in this liminal space where you were close enough to invest, far enough away to never feel secure. They gave you just enough attention to keep you interested, just enough distance to keep you destabilized. And in that destabilization, you started to believe the story they were implicitly telling, that you were too much, too needy, too intense, too demanding for simply wanting consistency and care. You felt second best because they made sure you knew there were other options, other people in their orbit, other ways they could spend their time and energy that didn't involve the emotional labor of actually showing up for you. They dangled their divided attention like it was a prize you had to compete for. And somewhere in that dynamic, you forgot that your undivided attention was the actual prize. That your willingness to be vulnerable, to care openly, to invest genuinely was the rare and valuable thing, not their carefully curated unavailability. But here's what happened after you finally walked away, after you stopped chasing, after you stopped trying to earn what should have been freely given, after you redirected all that energy you were pouring into them back into yourself. They noticed. Of course they noticed. The absence of your presence created a gap they didn't expect. And slowly, sometimes very slowly, the reality of what they had started to sink in. At first, they probably convinced themselves they didn't care, that they were fine, that there were plenty of other people, that you were just one option among many, and losing you didn't really cost them anything. But that story only holds up for so long. Because here's the thing about people who genuinely connected with you. They're not actually that common. Most interactions are surface level. Most connections don't go deep. Most people don't show up with the kind of authenticity and emotional availability you offered, even when it wasn't being received well. So they started to notice the difference between you and everyone else they were entertaining. The conversations weren't as satisfying. The attraction was more physical than substantial. The interactions felt hollow in ways they couldn't quite name. They kept trying to find what they had with you somewhere else, and they kept coming up empty. And that's when the grief started to set in. The crying you're sensing isn't necessarily literal tears, though it might be. It's the emotional recognition of loss. It's the moment when someone realizes they fumbled something real while they were busy playing games. It's the specific kind of regret that comes from knowing you had something valuable in your hands, and you treated it carelessly because you didn't understand its worth until it was gone. Here at Mary's Angel Tarot, what's coming through clearly is that their regret is valid, but it doesn't require your response. You don't owe them comfort in their realization. You don't owe them access to you just because they finally figured out what you knew all along. You don't owe them the emotional labor of helping them process their growth. Their tears, their grief, their regret, those are theirs to sit with. Those are the consequences of their choices catching up with them. And that's a necessary part of their evolution, not something you need to rescue them from. What's also true is that their recognition of your value doesn't restore your value. Your value was never actually diminished. It was only obscured by their inability to perceive it clearly. You were always worthy of consistency, care, respect, genuine interest. The fact that they couldn't see that or chose not to honor it was their limitation, not your lack. And now that they can see it, now that they're crying over the loss of you, that doesn't mean anything has fundamentally changed. It just means they've caught up to a truth you already knew. You might feel a certain satisfaction in knowing they're hurting. That's human. There's nothing wrong with that. After being made to feel small, after being GG away, after being treated like you were asking for too much when you were actually asking for the bare minimum, of course there's some vindication in knowing they regret it. Let yourself feel that. Don't spiritually bypass it by trying GGK transmute it into compassion or forgiveness. You're allowed to feel good about the fact that they finally understand what they lost. But don't let that satisfaction pull you backward. Don't let their tears become a reason to give them another chance unless something has fundamentally shifted in who they are and how they show up. Regret is easy. Regret is just an emotion. Changed behavior is hard. Changed behavior requires sustained effort, self-awareness, humility, and the willingness to do the work of becoming someone who can actually handle what you offer. And most people who cry over losing you, Gigi ain't actually prepared to do that work. They just miss what they had and want it back, but they haven't addressed the patterns that caused them to mishandle it in the first place. What you're learning through this experience is discernment. You're learning the difference between someone who misses you and someone who's actually capable of treating you differently. You're learning that words are easy and actions are everything. You're learning that your worth isn't determined by whether someone realizes it, and your peace isn't contingent on someone finally validating what you always knew, GGK. The version of you that accepted being second best doesn't exist anymore. She was a chrysalis, a necessary stage, but not your final form. The you that exists now has higher standards, not because you're being difficult or demanding, but because you've experienced what it feels like to betray yourself by staying in situations where you're not valued, and you're not willing to do that anymore. You've tasted your own self-respect, and it's sweeter than any breadcrumb of attention from someone who couldn't appreciate you. Their tears also represent a kind of death. the death of the persona they were trying to maintain, the death of the illusion that they could keep playing games without consequences, the death of the story they told themselves about who they were and what they wanted. And death, even of things that needed to die, is painful. So in some way, their grief is appropriate. It's the grief of someone who's being forced to grow, GGK themselves, to recognize that their patterns hurt people, including ultimately themselves. But their growth isn't your responsibility. You're not their teacher, their therapist, their savior, or their second chance. You were someone who cared about them and offered them something real, and they didn't know what to do with it, and now they have to live with that. And you get to live free from the weight of trying to convince someone of your worth. There's a particular kind of power in being the one who walked away, in being the one who decided they deserved better and actually followed through on that decision, in being the one who stopped accepting crumbs and went looking for a full meal. That power isn't GGK over them. It's about having power over your own life, your own choices, your own standards. It's about reclaiming your agency after giving it away in small increments every time you accepted less than you deserved. And now you're watching from a distance as they realize what they had, as GGK sit with the emptiness of their own games, as they cry over the loss of something they never properly valued when GGK's in front of them. And you get to observe that with a sense of completion rather than longing. You're not wishing you could go back and make it GGK work. You're grateful it ended because it made space for what's coming next. What's coming next is someone who doesn't need to lose you to appreciate you. Someone who sees your value immediately and treats you accordingly. Someone who GGKs because they're secure in GKs in themselves to be straightforward. Someone who makes you feel chosen, not second best. Someone who shows up consistently because they want to, not because you finally convince them you're worth it. GGK's GGK next is your own peace, your own wholeness, your own recognition that you're complete without someone else validating you, that you can be happy, fulfilled, purposeful, and joyful without a romantic partner at all. And from that place of completeness, if someone does enter your life, they'll be an addition, not a solution. They'll fix what's already beautiful, not fix what's broken. The player who pushed you away thought they were in control of the dynamic. They thought they had the power because they were the one who could walk away, who had options, who wasn't invested. But what they didn't realize is that real power isn't in withholding. Real power is in being able to offer yourself fully and survive if it's not received well. Real power is in walking away from what doesn't serve you, even when part of you still wants it. Real power is in choosing yourself, even when it means choosing loneliness temporarily. And you have that power now. Their tears are the sound of someone realizing they mistook your kindness for weakness, your openness for desperation, your vulnerability for need. They thought because you cared deeply that they had you locked in, that they could treat you however they wanted and you'd still be there. And you proved them wrong. You proved that you care deeply and also have boundaries, that you're capable of loving someone and also loving yourself enough to leave when you're not being treated right. This is also teaching you something essential about your own patterns, about why you stayed as long as you did, about what made you willing to accept being second best. And those insights are gold. They're the material of your own transformation. Because every time we accept less than we deserve, there's a reason. There's a wound or a belief or a fear driving that acceptance. And now you're seeing those drivers clearly, which means you can address them, heal them, release them. You're not going to repeat this pattern, not because you're being hypervigilant or closed off, but because you've genuinely integrated the lesson. Your body knows now what it feels like to be devalued, and it won't tolerate that frequency anymore. Your intuition is sharper. Your boundaries are clearer. Your self-worth is less negotiable. And all of that comes from having lived through this experience and chosen yourself on the other side of it. So let them cry. Let them sit in their regret. Let them process what they lost. You don't need to do anything with that information. You don't need to reach out, check in, offer comfort, or give them a chance to explain. Their journey is theirs. Your journey is yours. And your journey is leading you somewhere beautiful, somewhere whole, somewhere you're valued and celebrated and treated like the gift you are. The satisfaction you feel isn't petty. It's the natural result of justice being served, of natural consequences unfolding, of someone finally understanding what you always knew. And that satisfaction can coexist with your compassion. You can hope they grow from this. You can wish them well on their path. You can recognize their humanity while also maintaining firm boundaries around your own peace. What matters most is that you're free. Free from the mental gymnastics of trying to understand why you weren't enough. Free from the emotional labor of trying to convince someone to choose you. Free from the weight of feeling second best. And in that freedom, you're discovering who you actually are when you're not contorting yourself to fit someone else's limited vision. You're expansive. You're powerful. You're whole. And their tears don't change that one bit. Okay, thank you so much for watching Mary's Angel Tarot. If this reading resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more messages. Take care of your energy, trust your intuition, and I'll see you in the next reading. Bye-bye.